If you thought Big World Big Adventures to Movie was controversial, wait till you see what season 22 is like. The first in a new era in Thomas and Friends history.
Oh boy, I sure am super pumped for this one. Rachel, Mike, Matt, you guys ready for this one? Cause I sure as sugar am.
I'm ready to go for this. I'm really excited.
I'm ready!
Me too. Just think of the fun we'll have then.
Oh, I'm ready alright. God help me.
Matt, are you okay?
I'm fine. I just have a how can I say it? Awkward relationship with the season.
I'm sure you could do it, Matt. We could all get through this together.
Of course. Okay, Zack, start us off, please.
Now, we're going to be reviewing the episodes in sections. The first will be the international episodes, organized by country. The second section will be the Sodor portion, the one that everybody wants to see, am I right? They'll be reviewed based off the Australian air dates rather than the United Kingdom air dates.
Much as I am honoured to have the episodes all aired down here, it does puzzle me as to why they weren't all released in the UK first.
So, what episodes are we talking about?
The first episode we'll begin with is...
Number 1 engine.
Thomas has a race with Onge, another tank engine who's just like him. Not a bad start to the international episodes, let alone season 22 as a whole, but the plot of this episode is very akin to Thomas's Shortcut, except based in China, and with Onge in Birdie's place.
That's true enough, Zack, but I still enjoyed this one. The characters shown in Onge and the coaches that Thomas was running with are good foils to Thomas and even to Annie and Clarabelle, even though they aren't in this episode apart from the fantasy sequence.
Now this episode I would think is quite okay for me the first time I saw it even, but in that episode we can clearly see that Thomas still has his racing and competitive spirit within him since we last saw him in Big World Big Adventures. And to be honest, I kinda wish he would just at least drop it. Doesn't he even know that this could land him into trouble? But not only that, we get to see those 2 new coaches that Rachel just mentioned. It was quite a nice touch, but I could only imagine what Annie and Clarabelle would think if they caught him cheating on them. Isn't that really so wrong? Huh?
As for the coaches, their names are An and Yun-Long. They basically are the Annie and Clarabelle of China. Now, I know they don't entirely have the same personality traits as them, but that's all I have to say for who they are.
I don't know, Matt. An and Ling Yong seem more mischievous than Annie and Clarabelle to me.
Really? How do you reckon, Rach?
They did get Thomas to take a shortcut when Annie and Clarabelle were against the idea in Thomas's shortcut.
Ah, now I get it. And I do see the point. And yes, him taking the shortcut was a bad idea. But why? Well, for one, the tracks were twisted and had a lot of sharp corners in it too. I mean, I don't know why I question the logic in that part of the episode, but come on. You just can't help but question the logic in that, can ya? I mean, could we even see him falling off the cliff? I know it's morbid, but it's true to see that kind of bends the logic. Get it? Bends? Because of those bendy tracks?
I don't get it.
Yeah, me neither.
Oh, come on, guys, that's comic gold!
Yeah, leave it to the real comic geniuses.
Well, hang on a minute. I haven't given my thoughts yet.
Oops, sorry about that.
For a season premiere, as well as the first non-Sodor episode in the series, this was interesting. I liked Thomas' surprise when he found that he wasn't the only number 1 engine in China, and Onge is similar to Thomas in that they're both blue tank engines, they both have the number 1 paint on their sides, and they both love to race. Think they should try to race with Rainbow Dash Cam?
Aw, you put me in a spot again!
Maybe your pony OC will be racing with them too.
I wish.
Now this is going to be a common thing throughout season 22, but I'll say it right here. In each episode, one character, be it Thomas or someone else, will have a fantasy sequence that relates to the episode in some way. In Thomas's fantasy, he imagines himself, Annie and Clarabelle jumping over the Vickerstown Bridge and over the moon with Sir Topham-Hatt's face. Unless I'm mistaken, that looks like a reference to the iconic Steven Spielberg movie, E.T. the Extraterrestrial.
And trust me, the fantasy sequences will quickly get old.
I think the fantasy sequences vary in quality. Next episode, Zack?
Okay, so is number 1 engine a sign of better things to come, or does it get worse from there? Let's find out.
Thomas and the Dragon.
Thomas thinks he's bringing a real dragon to the Chinese New Year celebrations. This one left me with a weird feeling when watching it for the first time. I mean, did they suddenly forget that Thomas had seen a Chinese dragon before? Like, say, Thomas Percy and the Dragon?
That episode was so long ago. Back in season 3, that is.
Yeah, way back that episode was.
And even then, the Chinese dragon wasn't even real. It was made out of paper.
Well, to be fair, it's possible he might have forgotten about the incident. Not only that, how many kids are going to remember what that episode was?
Other classic episodes have been referenced in the modern era. I just felt like it was a missed opportunity, that's all.
I know what you mean, Rachel. Since 2015, I've been yearning for a sequel to The Adventure Begins that wasn't made by a few fans. And since Brenner left the show in August of 2018, I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon, if at all. So I suppose classic series references are better than nothing.
I was kind of hoping to get a scholarly-centered adaptation of the books in the correct order, but that doesn't seem likely now.
I find that to be very sad. I wouldn't have minded seeing a sequel, but again, it's pretty much wishful thinking there.
But we're getting off topic. Back to Thomas and the Dragon without Percy.
I thought it was a pretty funny episode. Probably my favorite of the international episodes so far, especially Young Bao's little joke with Thomas.
I just honestly have no words as to what I really think about this episode, but the one thing I can safely say is that it somehow teaches the children of this generation that this is the kind of holiday that the people of China would celebrate. Also, does anyone have any thoughts about when Thomas was chased down by an actual dragon? To me, part of me thinks it's cool, but they must have taken Thomas's fear of it a little bit too much.
I do admit, I've become more lenient toward this episode over time, but that factor still bothers me a little.
Let's just move on.
Runaway Truck.
After a mishap with an accident-prone van, Yong Bao teaches Thomas the art of Tai Chi. Now this episode teaches Thomas the art of Tai Chi, obviously, but when we see Yong Bao teaching him just that, it felt like he hasn't even learned a thing. I mean, we see Thomas watching it as to what he has to do, but he kept on failing every time. Seriously, how can he even screw up like that so easily every time? Seriously, how many times?
Maybe it's a force of habit? I mean, engines usually push their rolling stock if they're shunting.
Maybe, but you can see that Yong Bao actually did it carefully, whilst Thomas just straight up charges at the poor truck. Wait, what was his name again?
Just a moment, Cam. I'll check the wiki. Ah, Lee is the band's name.
Lei, huh? That's a short name.
I didn't see any problems with this episode. I thought it was great. In this section thus far, I like the dynamic between Thomas and Yong Bao. The latter feels a bit like a Chinese Edward, not the recolor, mind you. I even like how culture is implemented into the story very seamlessly, and also pays off at the message at the end.
Now you mention it, Zach, I guess the episode is pretty good. I did like Thomas and Yong Bao interacting, and Lee's pretty interesting. Learning something new is also pretty tricky, so I can understand Thomas's struggle.
Yeah, I kinda do see it, but with Thomas failing to learn Tai Chi every time, it still kinda bothers me.
Remember how I said that characters from that 2016 special weren't just a marketing ploy to sell toys? Well, to an extent, I was right. Like Zack said, Yong Bao is basically a Chinese Edward, personality-wise at least.
Don't you have anything to say about this one, Matt?
I've got nothing.
Alright, next episode, here we come!
Thomas in the Wild.
Thomas tries to find some pandas in the Chinese wilderness. Ah,
You said it, Matt. I just have no words for this episode, but I can brief you in on what it's about. Basically, Thomas is sent to take some photographers to take some pictures of some pandas. But this episode, in my opinion, just feels more boring than Three Steam Engines Gruff. An episode that nearly felt so empty!
Not to mention, this episode brings back one of the worst elements from the Dark Era. Don't know what I'm talking about? I'll tell you. The Free Strikes formula!
It's not the worst episode this season in my book. The animals are cute and all, but it just seems to drag on. If you're looking to take a nap, this episode is the one to play in the background, guys.
The only thing that was remotely enjoyable was that fantasy sequence with the black and white teddy bear. But even that wasn't enough to make this episode entertaining.
One word for this episode: boring.
Finally! Somebody agrees with me on this one. Next episode!
The Water Wheel.
Thomas transports a water wheel made of bamboo. And that's it. Remember Steady A from season 12? That's pretty much this episode set in a different country. That's all I've got.
The last episode was a drag, but this one? This is weird. The water wheel just bounces all over the place for a good few minutes while Thomas is chasing it all over China. And it ends up being delivered in the river. Okay, then?
Yeah, that's one way of putting it. I mean, him chasing down a bouncing water wheel made of bamboo? It feels like you're really trying here, but my god, just look how stupid it looks! How can a water wheel made of bamboo bounce so perfectly up hills? Yeah, I know, that's me questioning the logic of this episode again. Probably the second time I did so this review.
Honestly, if we were to question logic with every single episode, we'd be here until the end of the month.
That I wouldn't want.
I honestly have very little to say here. It's just Emily Saves the World or Steady Eddie set in China. It just feels like it tries too hard to be funny and nothing else. Also, how does United Nations' goal about saving water relate to this episode?
Beats the heck out of me.
Yeah, that ending segment with Thomas confused me big time. I know we didn't mention it in the other episodes, but here I think it needs to be addressed.
Meh, I just don't even care about that.
I guess India's next on the agenda.
Why not?
Alright.
Trusty Trunky.
On his first day in India, Thomas gets rescued by an elephant. Now we travel to India, a realm where we once again get to see Ashima, and she hasn't even changed a bit. Still the prettiest Indian engine anyone can set eyes upon.
And one of my favorite characters in the whole series. Sure, Ashima's no Emily, but I'm cool with that.
Well, she's sweet and all, but just don't mention that to Zack.
Oh crap! I forgot about that! I remembered what happened last time!
Not this again.
My fam, back up slowly.
There is very little happening throughout this episode. It's just exposition after exposition and it leads to Thomas being rescued by an elephant. But why the hell are they making him the lead character in the episodes? Let someone like Hong Mei take the lead role for goodness sake. They have to make him interesting too. And here, Thomas isn't. Actually, now that I think about it, nobody in this episode is interesting personality-wise, except for Rajiv, who feels like an Indian James. Because of that, this episode is boring.
I would think that this episode is a bit okay in plain speaking, but that one scene in that episode that I find weird was that imagination cloud of elephants working on the railway. Here we see Thomas, Percy and Emily all placed on the desk with the fat controller that has a face of an elephant. Now that imagination scene was very weird. Weird with a capital W.
Thomas the Tank Engine, you've come in on the wrong platform. You're causing confusion and delay. Watch where you're going.
It is kind of a weird fantasy, but I find another fantasy in another episode pretty funny. We'll come to that later.
Thomas goes to Bollywood.
Thomas dreams about having a role in a Bollywood movie. And this is the first time this episode we're gonna get a bit of controversy.
How so, Mike?
Well...
Finally! An episode in this season that's actually good!
Ah, finally! I found something that's worse than Free Steam Engine's gruff.
Oh, that's done it.
Oh dear. Mike, do you know where you put those whistles?
Yeah, 1 second. Be right back.
Thomas Goes to Bollywood is something I don't normally encounter, even in the midst of the worst and most unwatchable episodes of the entire show. I guess objectively, other episodes are worse, but I'm calling this the worst of season 22 because it shouldn't even qualify for this series. It's not a Thomas episode, it's a knockoff of a Thomas episode. This is a direct-to-DVD movie that somehow got released in theaters. It has the lack of nutrition of store-bought candy, but none of the flavor. It's the already been chewed gum of Thomas episodes. Everything else relating to our little blue friend in 2018, the crappy half-ass unfinished wood toys, the Twitter YouTube drama, the Bad Morals and Apology Impossible, more on that later. None of it measures up in badness to this. This is a Thomas episode in the same way a YouTube series is a TV show, and it is...
Excuse me? I'll have you know that Thomas Goes to Bollywood is one of the best international episodes to date!
There's only been one season so far of the international episodes, but that's beside the point.
I'm guessing the reason why you hate this episode is because of this little sequence?
Only one engine can save the day. Thomas the Tank Engine! You're a hero!
I'm just being really useful, Mom.
It's one of the only 2 fantasy sequences in the whole season that I found great. Unlike you.
No, it has nothing to do with the fantasy sequence. The whole damn thing is a maximum catastrophe of scrap.
Is not. For your information, the episode was actually really good.
Yeah, if you actually want an episode that completely lacks story and personality, and a message pulled out of the ass.
More like you're pulling things out of your ass.
I have not seen an episode 7 minutes long this awful since Push Me Pull You 10 years ago. What's this episode trying to say? Bollywood exists? No one cares. It's all style, no substance. Anything that's style over substance is automatically crap.
I bet you automatically hate any episode that features Ashima.
You take that back!
Is it just me, or are you two becoming more childish every episode?
It seems that way. The only time they didn't even come close to arguing was, what, when we reviewed School Days? Remember that?
I thought this episode was just there. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it, I just shrugged it off.
So, you're neutral towards it, Rachel?
Pretty much, Matt. However, the fantasy sequence has me split. I think it's cute, but it also rubs me the wrong way a little.
I just have no words to this episode. But I would think that one scene where Thomas rescued Ashima was quite funny, but that's about it really.
This episode. It's the worst of the entire show, and I thought I knew what a bad episode really was.
F you too, Ashima hater!
Hey! Knock it off, you two!
We've got 2 more episodes in here to go. Let's calm down and run through.
Yeah, anything to stop those two from bickering over the smallest yet stupid things all the time.
Thomas and the Monkey Palace.
Thomas takes a detour and encounters some troublesome monkeys.
And you fellas are so funny!
You have got to be kidding me.
Hooray! An episode that fits right at home in the Miller era! There's no way this episode's gonna be bad!
And in case you didn't know, that was sarcasm.
I do admit, the monkeys were quite cute, especially when one tried to steal Thomas's driver's hat. But there's not too much in this episode that's happening.
I agree with what Rachel had just mentioned. Those monkeys are cute, but yeah, this episode just feels like it has another boring storyline where the railway just plays no important part in it. Though, which international episode would I rank as the most boring more?
Unfortunately, this is another goddamn episode to feature the return of the goddamn free strikes formula. Seriously, goddamn this episode to hell!
Boring as monkey shit. Next episode.
Tiger Trouble.
Thomas and Rajit had a nasty encounter with some poachers. I kinda like this one. It does take on a risk most children's shows don't even try. The dangers of harming animals and the cruelty of poachers. After watching Bindi the Jungle Girl growing up, animals had become one of my passions, and it felt good to see Thomas and Rajiv bring the poachers to justice.
It was good that Thomas had managed to do something good for the animals and its environment for once. Them trying to capture those poor endangered tigers was just the lowest they could even stoop. Thank God they got caught in the end. The environment just doesn't need someone that threatens to change it or for its inhabitants.
I'll admit the episode wasn't bad, but it's still one I wouldn't want to watch again. I'll take Thomas Goes to Bollywood over it any day.
Well, I'll give Tiger Trouble this. At least it was better than the previous 2 episodes. So I guess it's the least bad one of the bunch? Well, this and I guess Trusty Trunky.
I'll be honest, I didn't care much for this episode when it first aired, mostly because I'd seen the Bollywood and Monkey Palace episodes, both of which leaving a bad taste in my mouth. But on reflection, mostly due to my rewriting of the India episodes with James in Thomas's place, Tiger Trouble actually isn't too bad. The story's better, the characters feel more like characters, except for Ashima and Noor Jahan, the latter of whom we know literally nothing about, but alas, the bar hadn't really been set that high, and it felt like the India batch redeemed itself too little too late.
Hey, blame the writers for shoehorning Thomas into every episode.
Well, I know a certain someone in our EC circle is going to be excited about our next batch of episodes.
Are they the Australian batch?
Yep, and there's only one way to introduce them. Hit it, men at work!
Thomas tries to be a tour guide when Shane is unavailable. However, what?
Do a barrel roll, Matt!
Do I look like I'm piloting an R-Wing from Star Fox 64 to you, Cam? Just get me out!
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! 4% set in my hometown, and I've been to Central Australia and came to the bush once. This will be amazing! I can't wait to do this! Let's get down to it now!
Well, Rachel, care to do the honors of starting the first one off?
Of course! During this episode, Shane shows off his tour guide skills and his witty charisma and jokes. Thomas wishes he could do that too, so he attempts to take out the coaches. However, things don't go very well when he ends up on a bridge. I really enjoyed this one. I especially liked seeing the coaches interact with Thomas. I think they're wiser than the coaches we saw back in China.
Not to mention, one of them, Aiden, is voiced by the episode's writer, Tim Bain, which makes this the second time a writer voices a character in their episode, the first being Britt Allcroft as Lady in The Magic Railroad.
That's pretty neat.
As for the other, Aubrey, she's voiced by Genevieve McCarthy. I've actually contacted her once before, and she's been very kind.
Wow, that's cool, Mike.
Funny enough, I once got into contact with someone from the show, back in February 2017, that is. Namely, one of its voice actors.
You're talking about Jules De Jong, the US voice for Emily, aren't you?
You're right on the button, Mike. She's easily my favorite of the show's voice actors, and is currently, to my dismay, the most underused, too. Oh, and we can't forget that she was also the original US voice for both Mavis and Rosy, too. Anyway, I emailed her, and eventually got a reply back.
I don't have much to say that hasn't already been said. There are good international-based episodes. Outback Thomas is indeed one of them.
I think no one in that episode does the jokes better than Shane. I should know. I'm always full of jokes. Hey, does anybody else want to hear?
Not a good time!
Ugh, fine. Next episode.
But first, could someone please get me out of here?
Cyclone Thomas.
Ah, come on! Seriously?
Thomas becomes a hero when Isla is unable to fly through a cyclone. Now in this episode, we can see that a huge storm was sweeping across the length of the country. Probably maybe a sandstorm or something. But one thing's for sure, it nearly feels like that this is somewhat just like the Railway series story Thomas and the Hurricane, when a hurricane hit Sodor. That is, if anyone else remembers that book as well as I do.
Does anyone remember the season 10 episode, Thomas and the Jet Plane? Well, this episode is a bit similar to that in a way. Thomas is jealous of a plane, but when said plane can't help people during a storm, Thomas helps out in the end. But then again, we probably won't see Jeremy in a future episode anytime soon, save for a Trackmaster toy cameo in Letters to Santa back in season 20.
Oh yeah, I completely forgotten about that as well.
Yeah, the episodes are pretty similar, just set in a different country. There's an Edwards exploit vibe I got towards the end with Thomas puffing away through the cyclone to and from Catherine, Australia. By the way, nice touch with using a real city.
I don't think I've been to Catherine, but I have been to Darwin, another place that's mentioned here. I think this episode is a really intense one. Cyclones are notorious in Australia, especially during summertime in the desert, and this episode showcased that really well. And I'm glad they did their research on the island of the cyclone as well. You may think it's calm, but it's a false sense of security.
Wow, that's very interesting, Rach.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about your country, Rachel. I guess it would be worth to watch those Australian-themed episodes after all.
I know. It's so much fun seeing these places come to life in Big World Big Adventures.
Come on!
Well, I guess it's on to the next one.
Around here.
Banjo and the Bushfire.
Thomas helps out when a bushfire takes place, and Ranger Jill names one of the recently hatched baby crocodiles after him.
Oh my god, another episode with another character named Thomas? That's another kind of thing that the CGI series had overdone, and it just gets up to the point where it gets super old super fast. First they named one of the pigs Thomas in Thomas and the Pigs, and then a baby named after Thomas in Thomas and the Babysitter, and now a baby crocodile named after Thomas? Again? I mean, what's next? A city on Sodor named after Thomas? Screw that!
You know, there actually is a city named Thomas in West Virginia.
Actually, Thomas was the name of one of the 12 apostles in the New Testament, and he was a doubter. In fact, the name Thomas derives from the Aramaic word for twin. Wait a second, Thomas doesn't have a twin!
No, duh.
Well, Aside from that, gentlemen, let's get into the rest of the episode. You think cyclones are terrible? Wait till you see the effects of bushfires. Now, some naturally caused fires can help the environment somewhat. They burn out dead plants and weeds that shouldn't be there, but when out of control fires get made by campfires and the like, it could harm everything in its path. Nearly grown plants and some animals may not get it out of the way in time. There's one bushfire that pushed a school camp further back when I was in late primary school.
So I'm guessing bushfires are common in Australia too?
Well, when it's really hot. I also remember a little koala rescued from a fire too. Sam was her name. I guess that was the inspiration for rescuing a koala in this Thomas episode.
Wow.
This episode gives us the debut of Tamika the Steam Motor Rail, and quite possibly her only appearance in the show. Unless they do something with her in season 23, it's a crying shame because I actually found the idea of a steam rail motor interesting.
I thought the fantasy sequence was really funny in this episode, especially when Annie says this.
It's the fat crook Trulor!
Or, if you live in America, Sir Crockham hat.
Oh dear.
Hey! I was supposed to be telling jokes here!
Kangaroo Christmas.
A real kangaroo mistakes a toy kangaroo for her Joey.
You know the song White Christmas? That doesn't happen down there. In fact, where I live, we hardly ever have snow at Christmas. Granted, we do get snow in January, February, or even March, but very rarely in December.
Yeah, it sucks having no snow back here in Britain. Though there was that freak snowstorm that hit my country not long ago. Ugh, it was a nightmare.
Well, that's very interesting. And here's something else. 2 of my family went on a honeymoon after their wedding to America to get a white Christmas, and it didn't snow there either. Back on topic. This episode is really sweet. Thomas may have been disappointed that there was no snow, but he did help a little girl get a toy kangaroo back. One thing I do know, I haven't experienced animals kidnapping my soft toys. Unless you count my dog, that is.
I don't have too much to say about this episode apart from that. I will say though, that this is a very nice way to end the Aussie episodes and the international episodes this season.
One thing I can say is that I do like kangaroos. Truly one of the most elegant creatures in Australia.
Yeah, in conclusion, it's not perfect, but it's an episode you might want to check out over the holidays.
Now, I'd be more than happy to help discuss the Sodor-based episodes, but only if somebody gets me out of here.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Come on, Rachel.
Oh, look here! The first episode we're going to be talking about.
When did this happen? Nobody told me. You can't move Henry as well, sir. Why don't you just go ahead and change everything? Shall I push my coaches from now on instead of pulling them, sir? Warden!
It had to be forever and f***ing ever.
It's called Forever and Ever. And what are you gonna do about it, baddie?
Zack, I don't think you should be pushing him to the limit.
Cam's right, Zack. Besides...
Forever and Ever happens to be one of your favorite episodes, right? You love Forever and Ever, don't you? Oh, you alright, Rach?
How are things settling? Things settled a bit there, Zack?
I think Matt will be fine. Just need to let some steam. Smoke.
Okay. I think I'll stand away from him for a bit.
Hold the elevator, Rach. Matt's anger still scares me.
Forever and ever.
Warden is upset about all the recent changes to the Northwestern Railway. Well, this is going to be a fun one. It was inevitable that with all the changes made to the show, there'd have to be an episode addressing audience concerns.
Too bad the writers did it the wrong way! The whole episode was basically an Attack the Critics-based one!
At least this didn't focus on criticisms that had already been addressed by now.
Still, they should have done it in a different way!
And how would you handle it?
Anything other than what we ended up with. This was quite possibly the shittiest episode yet. I knew it would be shit once I saw the summary for it, and it was written by Andrew Brenner even. Fortunately, I don't blame him for writing it.
Blame him for what? Being upset with selfish, immature fans for being whiny and petty about even the tiniest changes made to the show?
I know that the Thomas fandom hasn't exactly been kind in such since 2017, and I'm not going to defend all of the fans, but I honestly think that certain fans had every right to be upset with the show's changes, along with being targeted by the writers for not liking them. I'm not part of the Thomas fandom, but I can still understand that it isn't right to be targeted for mocking or such by the writing team.
I can understand getting upset with change, and Gordon has gone through what a lot of people would have gone through. I'd even say this is partly similar to Read It and Wait from MLP Season 2. The viewer and Gordon are going through the same hoops at the same time, and the moral, don't knock it till you try it, as well as giving a newcomer a chance, was well shown here. And this is also Engine of the Future done right. I believe Mike can put this into better words than I can.
If there's any episode I feel ashamed for being too nice towards, it's Engine of the Future. You remember our first episode where Zack and I discussed the episodes on the Extraordinary Engines DVD? You may recall me trying to give that episode the benefit of the doubts. Well, I take that back. All of it. The engines were jerks for no reason at all. Hugo was an absolute crybaby throughout both his episodes, and both his episodes were just as disposable as Harris Silververse himself. As for this DVD, I don't want to watch another second of it ever. And there are plenty of other episodes in season 20 that I like, but the really bad episodes, plus the pandering to the fans outside the target demographic, hurt my opinion on this season. I'm not saying that season 20 was terrible, I'm just saying I find it very overrated. In fact, it's actually my least favorite season of the Brenner era, pre-BWBA. Let me be clear. I don't think season 20 is a bad season. In fact, I found a number of episodes to be quite good in all honesty. It's just not a season I'd be willing to watch on its own, and certainly not all in one go. As for Forever and Ever, Gordon was mostly upset that Edward and Henry, two characters whom he's been friends with since the very beginning, were leaving Tidmouth to live at Wellsworth and Vicarstown respectively, even though Gordon was sometimes a jerk towards them. I guess you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Too bad we never got Henry's reason for leaving.
When the episode came out, I wasn't certainly expecting this to roll out quite suddenly. When Gordon started going crazy about these big changes that are happening across Sodor, it nearly felt like Twilight went crazy from that MLP episode Lesson 0. And that imagination cloud where Gordon was in some kind of weird wonderland, it kind of brought a smile to me for some unknown reason I can't explain.
Just admit it, man. This episode was justified.
Fuck no. I can't believe you guys are defending an Attack the Critics episode. First there was Fame and Misfortune from My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, and now this one. Besides, you and Mike hated Fame and Misfortune too, Zack.
Well, Mike doesn't like that episode, but he's a bit more lenient towards it than you and Zack are, Matt. So am I, by the way.
And me too, Rachel. Don't forget that.
You guys know what I mean. Anyway, I don't care what any of you have to say about it. I stand by my opinion. This episode was fucking shit. And you know it.
And I stand by my opinion that you're stupid.
Shut your mouth, Zack! You really piss me off. Especially when defending an Attack the Critics-based episode.
But at least Forever and Ever was done properly.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Wasn't.
Wasn't.
Was.
Wasn't.
I say Forever and Ever was justified. And if you don't like it, you can fuck off.
Okay, Matt. It's a good episode, like you said.
Exactly. Wait, what? Grr. You know what? Fuck this. Come and find me when we get to an episode that is better than Forever and fucking Ever. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, what's his problem, Doc?
Second episode of Sodor now?
What about Matt?
Let's give him some time to cool off. Still, you shouldn't have pushed him like that. I almost felt ashamed of you, Zack. Right. Cue the next episode!
Confusion without delay.
New engine Rebecca becomes determined to prove her place on Sodor.
Remember how Nia said that since Henry has moved out of Tidmouth, a new engine would have to fill his empty berth? That's when Rebecca came in. And of the newbies this season, Becky is by far my favorite. In fact, as far as Tom's characters in general, she's right above everyone else. Except for Percy. You know, I just saw something. Percy's US voice actor, Christopher Ragland, is actually married to Rebecca's voice actress, Rachel Miller. And their two characters, plus number one himself, make up my top 3 characters in the show.
That's really cool, Mike. Onto the episode itself, though. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Rebecca was a great new character, and the message is one that people needed to learn too. Being too early can be just as harmful as being too late. Also, the bit with the Tom hat was hilarious.
confusion and a great deal of confusion.
Though surprisingly not delay.
I also love the part where Rebecca Roast finds Scotsman in front of his brother.
Hello, little brother. Oh, and hello again, new engine.
My name's Rebecca, and I don't know why you keep calling Gordon little brother. You look the same size to me. If anything, I think Gordon looks bigger.
I just honestly have no words as to what I really feel in that episode. But one thing's for certain, Rebecca does sound quite sweet. Kinda reminds me of Molly without the shyness. Also, there's one scene where the Flying Scotsman taunts Gordon in front of Rebecca to the point where she defends him. I thought it was quite nice, but I kinda think they gave Scott a bit of a really harsh personality when he taunts his brother. I mean, why? Don't they think they're just crossing the line like that?
Rebecca is my second favorite character behind Emily, and her interactions with the likes of Diesel and Scotsman are funny. One problem, however, is how Henry's departure from Tibbet feels like an afterthought. It honestly says a lot as to how he's been treated since 1943. Is it any wonder that Audrey wanted to leave him in the tunnel forever?
That's really a harsher in hindsight moment. I hope fans can write a story on why he decided to move to Vickerstown. Maybe he's gotten a brother-sister bond with Rosy.
What's this? Ah, looks like Matt has some words for us about Rebecca.
What does it say?
I actually like Rebecca. She's not in my top 10 listings, but I still like her. However, I would also like to point out that she is, along with Nia, one of the biggest space-breaking characters in the whole series. And it has to do with her and Nia both replacing Henry and Edward respectively on the Steam team. Lots of people like Nia and Rebecca, yes, but lots of others also hate them with a passion for being supposedly Mary Sue's with little to no character flaws, and especially for replacing two of the most loved characters in the whole franchise.
Oh yeah, we forgot to bring that bit up.
Now, how did we let that slide?
Who knows? Next episode!
What Rebecca does.
After seeing Belle's water cannons, Marion's shovel, and Harvey's crane, Rebecca worries that there is nothing special about her.
Well, I just honestly have no words as to what I think about this episode, but the whole plot tells us that with Rebecca being greeted by the other engines who all have their special unique talents, it made her longing to be someone that she's not. I kinda wish I just put them into good plain speaking, but I just find this episode okay, really.
It's basically best engine ever with Rebecca in Emily's place, but it's still a great episode regardless. Perhaps the funniest thing about the episode wasn't the fantasy sequence, no, it was the moment where Duck and Emily are on friendly terms with each other. It almost feels as if the writer's way of saying sorry for Emily's mistreatment 4 years after Duck and Slip Coaches aired, but better than nothing. Also, is it just me, or is it hilarious that they get along better than the majority of the fan base?
Rebecca is just a sweetie pie throughout the entire episode.
Yay, me!
Showing kindness to Belle, Marion, and Harvey. Anyone else want to see more interactions with that quartet? The one thing that threw me for a loop was Cecil 10's claw coming out of nowhere in the fantasy sequence. Hope that doesn't mean anything.
Ugh, heaven forbid if Diesel 10 comes back more sickeningly nice than ever.
Right. Keep him in merchandise where he belongs. Hey, Matt has a few words about the episode.
What Rebecca does was actually alright. I'll also admit that Rebecca was a sweetheart in it. I also wouldn't mind if Diesel 10 came back, but keep him evil and such.
Samson and the fireworks.
Samson thinks some fog detonators are fireworks and becomes terrified of the sound. And to be honest, I think this is another boring episode. I got really nothing to say about it.
I wouldn't go far as to calling it boring. I mean, Samson hasn't had the best reputation as far as Brenner characters go. Samson sent for scrap just made him look like an idiot, and saving time was as interesting as watching paint dry for the most part. This one, however, felt more relatable and down to earth. I'm not the biggest fan of fireworks, especially not on the 4th of July, and I get easily distressed by the loud noise of fireworks bangs.
I get startled by loud noises too, and considering the engines have rolled right over the detonators, I could tell they'd be almost deafening to them. At least it's not as bad as that one foghorn from season 6, am I right? But I really like this episode. We get to see more of the Samson and Bradford dynamic, and Bradford's showing off a more gentle side we haven't seen in his debut.
I thought this was a really good episode. I too like the dynamic between Samson and his brake van, and Samson has actually shown to be a likable character and not a know-nothing show-off, whereas Bradford is shown to have more to his character than the drill sergeant type we saw in his debut episodes.
So, what did I miss?
Nice of you to return. Feeling better?
Yeah, I am. Just don't ever push me like that again, okay?
Alright, fine.
Rosy is red.
Thomas gets embarrassed when the engines tease him for being in love with Rosy. Along with Forever and F***ing Ever, Rosy is Red is among one of the most controversial episodes of the whole season. Not due to base-breaking characters in Nia or Rebecca, but because of possible romance between Thomas and Rosy. Shipping happens to be a very nasty topic in the fandom, namely with the hardcore fans who say that shipping trains together doesn't make a lick of sense, and that romance doesn't belong on a program like Thomas and Friends.
I don't get it. Pigeons are allowed to express any of the 5 emotions we represent, but not love? If that's the case, then why the hell are they even anthropomorphized? You may as well get rid of the faces and have a railway documentary instead.
I have shipped Thomas Pierce since the very beginning of my days on here. Heck, my username is a dead giveaway as to what my top pairing is, and I've already mentioned Duck and Flora in another episode. I also heavily ship other pairings, including Thomas and Lady, Percy and Rosy, and the Scottish twins with the high-speed twins. And though pairings do vary from user to user, no matter what they are, I have seen those users being put down, and I have been through this myself.
I may be a Thomas shipper myself, but sometimes I keep shipping different engines together. I don't even know where to begin.
I suppose I could tell you guys some of the romantic pairings I do support. Yes, I happen to ship the characters too. So, Mike, how about you?
Well, I'm not as crazy about Thomas ships as you are here, but I do respect them. In fact, not gonna lie, I kinda admire Tom Rosy.
And you have Rosy as Red to thank for it?
In a way, yeah.
Is this episode worth all the hate it gets? Absolutely not. Those who hate it based on the aforementioned topic are missing the point. Just because a boy and a girl are friends, that does not mean they're in love, something that I wish certain groups of people would take notice of.
I'll admit I do like the pairing of Flash Sentry and Sunset Shimmer. Not from the first Equestria Girls film, but from the later films.
Oh, that would never work between them. And that's not even mentioning she's a pony in a human's body. So I saw that in the first 2 movies and to an extent friendship games, but that's beside the point.
Agreed, Zach. I'm Vincent Shimmer and Twice-Century all the way.
I personally don't like Twice-Century myself, never have and never will, but I respect people who do like that shipping.
Glad to hear that, Mike. Also, I've grown to like Rura Math as well.
You have?
Yep, ever since Art of Sun's Love. It showcases a very realistic angle to how relationships form. The best relationships start off as good friends, and then before you know it, feelings start developing.
Well, I'm glad you approve of that ship.
Wait, what about Guardian Soul and Rainbow Dash? I just feel totally left out, only because of that Soar and Dash pairing that makes my blood boil with fury! Ugh! I wish that bastard didn't even exist in the first place! That pairing just won't work! AKA it sucks!
Okay then.
Well, in plain speaking, do you guys still support Guardian and Rainbow altogether, despite that, well, you know, maybe not.
Hey, I still like it, Cam. It's very cute in my eyes.
To be honest, Cam, while I like Soren and Rainbow Dash being together, I also like Guardian and Rainbow Dash being together too.
I see. There's nothing wrong with that, I suppose. But you know I still despise it, right? Rachel?
I do understand, Cam, but that doesn't mean everyone does. I still ship Soren Dash pretty hard, and I do like Eurosea with Rainbow Dash too.
Yeah, everyone's entitled to their opinion on whom they think should be with whom.
Thanks, guys. I guess that makes me a little better. I'm sorry for making it a big deal.
And concerning Art of Sun's Love, I think Rarity and Math are going to make it official in a couple of volumes. I can't wait for that.
I know what you mean.
Still wish my character was part of that story too. Still, at least I got my story Love from a Rainbow to work on if anyone's interested.
What? What's wrong, Matt?
Is there something on our faces?
No, rather, I think there's something going on between you two.
What in the name of StarClan do you mean?
Oh, come on. You know what I mean, Rachel. And I bet you do too, Mike. Wink, wink.
What? Matt, what in the name of Gaudry is wrong with you? Rachel and I are friends. Nothing more and nothing less. There is nothing going on between us and you know it. Besides, I actually have a girlfriend and it's not Rachel.
Yeah, I have a brother named Mike. That would be awkward.
Okay, if you say so. Lovebirds.
You don't think this has anything to do with us referring to them as children and us being Team Dad and Team Mom, do you?
I don't think so, but then again...
Oi, man, you key this up and I'll include your pony owner in Our of a Son's Love and have you ship with Jennifer montage. How about that?
And I'll make sure that the next Thomas episode we watch will be Thomas Goes to Bollywood. Or maybe we'll watch The Great Race instead.
I wouldn't actually think of doing it. That's too sadistic by my standards.
I know what you mean, Zack.
Phew! Glad I'm off the hook on this one.
Yeah. What were we talking about again?
Rosy is red?
Oh yeah, but where'd we leave off again?
Now that you mention it, Zack, I'm lost as well.
How did we get to this point?
I think I have an idea. Let's look at the Emotions Corner Season 1 on DVD.
Mike?
Yeah?
How the hell is there a DVD based on the series when we're in the middle of episode 10?
Ah, it's the latest trend. Instant home media. It comes out before it's finished.
Didn't it happen back in 1987?
That was with VHS, Zack. Anyway, let's see where we left off, shall we?
What's up with Zack?
Aw, that's too early. Skip ahead.
Alright.
Yeah, logging locos have more personality than a Shima. I like that guy. He's funny.
Skip ahead again. And never bring that up again.
Alright.
Even Journey Beyond Sodor fell flat at points, so really, maybe it's time they brought an end to the hour-long specials. After all, where else can Thomas go after having traveled the world?
Serves you right, Zack.
Not. Are we done with episode 9 yet?
Hold on, guys.
Whole damn thing is a maximum catastrophe of scrap.
It's not. For your information.
Why did that have to happen?
Really
only because it's part of this episode.
Completely lacks story. What the hell are we looking at? When does this happen in the episode?
Wait, we're actually looking at now. Everything that happens now is happening now.
Well, what's happened to Den?
We just passed then.
When?
Just now. We're at now.
Can't we go back to Den?
When?
Now.
Now?
Now?
I don't think we can.
Well, why not?
We just missed it.
When?
Just now.
And when will Den be now?
Soon?
How soon?
Oh, the hell with this. I'm taking over. I don't get it. Pigeons are allowed to express any of the 5 emotions we represent, but not love? If that's the case, then why the hell are they even anthropomorphized? You may as well get rid of the faces and have a railway documentary instead. Ah, now we're talking.
What?
I just found where we left off.
Where?
When I mentioned that fans would rather have a railway documentary if they don't want the engines to feel anything. And then we end up talking about preferring shippings and random, irrelevant excuses for comedy up to this point.
Ah, now I remember.
Now let's resume to talking about Rosy is Red.
When?
Right now. Unless I checked, it's Rachel's turn.
Who?
Ugh, Rachel, let's just hear your thoughts already.
This one is one of my favorites this season. Both Thomas and Rosy are very relatable. Thomas for the fact he's teased because others think there's something going on with him and Rosy. Gee, I wonder where this has happened before. and Rosy for being turned down by someone who she considers a friend. So Topham Hatt also shines here, as he tries to arrange a surprise for his wife, a little kitten of all things. Now isn't that just the sweetest gesture?
Aw, you're so cute, guys! Hold on, guys. Give me a second. Yeah, this episode gets to tease us on many people who shipped Thomas and Rosy together finally came true. Well, that's only happened as one imagination cloud where the both of them are up on a tree as the other engines talk to Thomas's overprotective nature towards Rosy. Does this episode bring a smile to anyone's faces? Unless they hate it with a burning passion, of course, because I sure don't.
Fortunately, I really like the episode too. It's definitely one of my top episodes for the season, and one I will gladly watch again.
Agreed. On a side note, it's pretty much Thomas's equivalent to Brotherhood Social, an episode with an amazing theme, but many fans tend to overlook it completely in favor of other factors.
Too true. On to the next episode then?
Thomas's Animal Arc.
Thomas helps some animals find shelter in order to stay warm.
Guys? Doesn't it strike you as odd that this episode is retelling the story of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Not that I think it's odd or anything, it's because that one scene at the end where an ostrich lays an egg on James's buffer beam, that's what got me thinking, really.
Actually, this story takes inspiration from the Old Testament story Noah's Ark. Jesus is in the New Testament. On to the episode itself. I was surprised this one and the later episode here has aired so early. It's one of the 3 Christmas-based episodes we got this season, but this episode is a really good one. It's good to see the engines are putting the animals' needs ahead of their own. I know James isn't keen at first, but he grows attached to the ostrich chick when it hatches in the end. If Donald was there, I think he'd get a sense of deja vu.
Because of that story, Donald's Duck? I get what you're saying. Actually, now that you mention it, this episode does give me a warm feeling inside. It really is a touching episode after all.
Yeah, it's nice to show that we should always help those less fortunate enough, and despite Thomas's international ventures being hit or miss at best, it's nice that they have practical use back on home rails, so they're not completely pointless.
I have an idea. When I was in India, I came off the rails and an elephant helped me back onto the tracks.
Well, I guess the international episodes are canon, whether fans like it or not. Anyway, this was a very sweet episode all around, and that's really all I have to say. What about you, Matt?
I wish I had something, but I seriously have nothing to say about the episode.
Maybe this next episode will?
An engine of many colors.
After his crash in the fastest red engine on Sodor, James fears that he will be repainted a different color. Now this is the episode I am so waiting to share my thoughts with for so long. Now the reason why this episode was really a big deal for me is because it was written for the series by a Thomas fan. Yes, an actual Thomas fan. Now this episode was set just after the fastest red engine on Sodor after James had crashed into Tidmer's sheds and was sent to be repaired and repainted. But during his wait for his repaint, he kept on having nightmares about which colours he'll be painted into. First blue, then green, and then silver, until he was in many colours of the spinning colourful turntable of death. Wait, why did that just come out of me?
Before we talk about the episode proper, I should mention that this episode was written by our very own Michael White, better known as White House Films on YouTube. You may know him best as that guy who made his own version of Audrey's Farquhar Mall Railway, as well as his upcoming adaptation on the Branch on Engine stories. He also does a series of live streams with some of his online friends called The Modeler's Corner, and he is a writer for the show Pablo.
It's been confirmed from Michael White that this episode was not a Season 21 leftover. Still, it's a fun episode regardless. In fact, sometime back I merged this episode, the fastest red engine on Sodor, and a shed forever into a mini special called Red Engines and Shed Trouble. Now, I would post on YouTube, but if personal experiences taught me anything, Mattel is quite stingy with copyright.
Too bad the copyrights issue will ensure that full episodes of later content will never stay up for very long.
It just goes to show how fatally flawed YouTube's Content ID Autobot system is.
It's no secret by this point that YouTube's copyright system is fundamentally broken. We speak from experience, and it's universally agreed by this point. Not much else to say on that, so let's move on. In this episode, we get a reference to the Season 1 episode, James and the Coaches, where James says this.
A long time ago, the VAT controller said that if I misbehaved again, he would paint me blue.
As a kid watching that episode on the James Learns a Lesson and Other Stories VHS, I always wondered what James would look like if he were actually painted blue. And I would imagine others confusing him for Edward. And what you know? That also happens in the episode.
Look, Daddy!
Actually, James was painted blue once before, in the Season 1 episode, Edward and Gordon, near the very end.
That was a goof on the mall maker's part, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Either way, I tip my hat to White House Films for writing his first episode for the show. Well, if I was wearing a hat.
Now, if you remember Journey Beyond Sodor, there was one scene that when James had made numerous Railway series references of Thomas's misfortunes, and it would seem to me that Mattel has done quite a lot of it while they were filming Season 22, making numerous Railway series references much better than Seasons 8 to 12 did. So with all that happening recently, it would seem to me that Mattel really does care about how the series was made back then, and was still clinging on to what it used to be back then. So, if Mattel really does care about how the series was made back then, why did they even try something new for Thomas to travel the world to begin with anyway?
I sure wish I knew, but it might have been from a question from a young fan. Mattel then took it and ran with it.
Guess we'll never know, sadly.
Oh well, I really like this episode too. They used the fantasy sequence to their advantage here, with James going through all those dreams to show off his various colours. Though, did anyone think Diesel seemed a bit creepy at the end of the last dream? I know James was just dreaming, but that seemed to indicate James would believe Diesel would want him to crash. James, I don't think Diesel's that sadistic.
Well, his ego over his rivalry of steam engines never changes. And besides, it was just a dream sequence after all. And to conclude my thoughts about this episode, if Mattel does finally recognize our talents of making good Thomas and Friends stories, then maybe there could still be hope for the future of the series. Who knows? We might make the series great again.
Very funny, Biff Tannen.
Now why don't you make like a tree and get out of here? It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong. All right, then leave.
What? I'm not trying to be like Donald Trump, I swear.
I'm kidding, of course. Now we go from one great episode to another in...
School of Duck.
Duck tries to find a coach to take the children of Harwood to school at Knapford. Of all the episodes this season, School of Duck is my favorite of the lot, as well as my favorite CGI episode to date. First off, the episode was written by Lee Pressman, who has written some very slice-of-life episodes, and many of them are great. In a way, he's like the Josh Haber of Thomas and Friends, or something like that. He also co-created the British drama series Teabag, which featured Thomas's UK voice actor John Hasler's t-shirt. Plus, I like the moral of how old things can still be useful. Sure, the save from scrap cliche has been used since season 2 with, well, save from scrap, as well as escape and pursing the Calliope, but is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. I mean, Thomas loving to race has been a trope used since the early days, and that's still being used to this day. In fact, this episode shares similarities with a certain other episode from season 5 that uses this trope.
They called me old slow coach and told me I wasn't useful anymore. Now only the mice ride in me.
Yep, Thomas Percy, an old slow coach. And that leads me to my third point. This episode features a guest appearance from former narrator Mark Morahan. In this episode, Mark plays an old coach named Dexter. Dexter was an old coach that had been left on a siding many years ago when his axles broke. Duck needed a coach to take the school children of Harwick back home from Knapford, so he tries using Dexter, but since his wheels wouldn't work, he couldn't be used. Did that stop Duck from trying to help? No. He decides that even though Dexter's wheels couldn't be fixed, Dexter himself could be repainted and be made into a school classroom. As far as I'm concerned, Dexter is a great character with some great potential and a great voice actor. If they bring him back for season 23 or any future seasons, I'll be quite happy.
It's about time we get to finally see a well-written episode with our favorite Great Western engine, Duck himself.
I don't have too much to add on to what Mike already said, but I think Duck is very well characterized here. We get to see his compassionate and resourceful side as he helps Dexter find a purpose in life, as we see him helping out the children at the same time. We also get to see a contrast between him and Daisy. Daisy isn't very happy of the kids messing up their seats, but Duck is very happy to see the children in a good mood. The gags with Duck trying to find a coach to get the children to school is also pretty funny. This is also my favorite episode this season. I still like other CGI episodes more, but this is still really good.
If I could just say another thing about School of Duck, I would seem to think that this episode plays really well, because not only is Duck given a well-written role in this episode, but the new character Dexter was quite a nice touch. I could only imagine what it would be like if they ever brought back old Slow Coach, but then again, she would still be really useful by now, so I guess I kind of see why they made Dexter to be lost, found, and repaired in the first place. I do hope we could see him again in the near future. Who knows? Maybe we could see him pulling some passages again. I mean, everyone's got to have a hobby, right? Him being a coach and a schoolhouse.
For a while, I wasn't really into Duck because of certain moments, but watching this episode, I find he deserved more than this. This is easily his best role since All at Sea from the third season, and one that could still be right at home with seasons 17 to 21.
There's something else I forgot to mention before we move on. Remember Hannah the coach from Hasty Hannah? Well, Duck decided to use her before Toby stops him.
Sorry, Duck. I need Hannah while Henrietta's at the steamworks.
Oh, sorry, Toby.
So either Henrietta had to go to the steamworks for a second time, or this episode took place during the events of Hasty Hannah. However, since that episode was also written by Lee, I can't say for sure, so take your pick.
Well, it also tells us Hannah is a spare coach on Sodor. I guess the same could be said for the slip coaches, considering I think Edward is using them?
Maybe, but they weren't used very much since season 18 anyway, save for background cameos from Duck or whoever.
I think we've sung enough praises for this episode, so let's move on to...
Seeing is believing.
Merlin comes to Sodor for the first time, and Percy becomes eager to meet him.
This episode is quite good. It's great seeing Merlin visit Sodor and meeting everyone. I also liked Trevor's role. It seems to give him a playful nature we've never seen before. And Percy's role was very cute, with him thinking Merlin was actually invisible. The ending felt unfinished though. Percy never got to meet Merlin, and he didn't know that the whistle was Trevor's. I still enjoyed this one, but it felt weighted compared to the most of the Sodor episodes this season.
Yeah, at least Trevor's role in this episode was better than in that certain season 20 episode, which shall not be mentioned.
Kinda wish we got to see more of Lexi and Theo making a comeback, especially Hurricane and Frankie. Guess we might see them in season 23. I pretty have not much to say about this one, really.
No, I have nothing to say about this one. Sorry, guys.
There's not really a lot happening, to be honest. It just ends. At least Hugh Bonneville got to voice Merlin again. Despite the unfinished feel, at least Seeing is Believing is better than the episode that came right after it. With Becky Overton back on Sodor, you'd think she'd feel more right at home with episodes like Wild Water Rescue, The Beast of Sodor, and Diesel's Ghostly Christmas from season 19. What could possibly go wrong with that? You wanna know? Too bad, we're showing you.
Apology impossible.
AKA the worst episode of this season and the worst episode of the Brenner era. Yeah, worse than last season's Emily in the Middle, if that's possible. At least Emily was likable in that episode. Here, however, well, Philip was bullied the entire episode by James. I get that James is vain, but come on! Philip saved his wife once when he fell off the bridge. He should have respected the little guy after that, right?
This is the only episode I find to be worse than Forever and F***ing Ever, with one of the most toxic morals we all have ever seen. James was at his absolute worst here, and I thought James to the Rescue was his worst portrayal.
You are a steam tram. Steam trams can't be rescue engines.
And Philip, with backup from a few characters, didn't even do anything to stand up to his bully, just simply backing down from him and letting Sir Topham Hatt deal with the situation. Were the writers trying to make this episode a complete take that scrappy moment towards Philip to satisfy people who hate him? Well, it sure seemed like it. Look, I know Philip wasn't exactly the most well-liked character in his first few episodes, but he did eventually wise up and gain a number of fans.
As for James, you'd think after All in Vain, the fastest red engine on Sodor, and an engine of many colors, which we talked about earlier, that he would have finally learned his lesson about showing off. But no! He is an absolute jerk to Philip for no reason. Seriously, what the hell did Philip do to you, James? Then there's the moral, which really puts it above the way she does it, and even so Surprise Day in terms of awfulness. Now, at first, I thought the message was trying to convey that when you do something that hurts someone else, you should apologize to them, which in all honesty doesn't sound like a bad idea for a moral. In fact, there's a Schemer Presents segment that I know of that portrays the message more effectively. Here, the message came across as you shouldn't stand up to bullies.
What? What the f***?
Yeah, not a very good message for kids. In fact, it's one of those special messages that can cause more harm to society than good. It's bad morals like these that make me hate episodes like this and Secrets and Pies, the worst episode of MLP, and I will hear no argument against that statement. Where do I place the other episodes I hate? Well, The Way She Does It would be at number 3. While I do stand by my opinion on it being insufferable in every way, I can kind of see other people liking it. So a surprise day would be at number 2. And I don't think I need to say anything about it by this point. You know why it's awful? I know why it's awful. We all know why it's awful. So let's just leave it at that.
Well, I could say that this episode really does suck. Not only because of the fact that James was rude to Philip for no bloody reason at all, but the other engines are also being involved in this whole thing as well. Doesn't it slowly dawn upon him that James is becoming an even jerk than Gordon? I mean, he was a total jerk to Thomas in Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure and in The Great Race. But for James, how low could he even stoop? I know the hunters back in Tiger Trouble can stoop low, but James... Ugh. Do I even need to express my hatred for this episode? What even is his character arc in that episode?
Up until this point, there have been some episodes where we debated over which episodes were actually bad, but here, there is honestly no argument whatsoever that this episode is just awful. For me, it's the second worst episode of the show, only behind Thomas Goes to Bollywood. Between this episode and the Indian episodes, I'm betting Becky Overton is practically the Mike Vogel of Thomas and Friends. There is, however, one good thing we can say about Apology Impossible.
What's that?
It's still better than Forgotten Friendship.
What did you say?
Boys, stop that! Next episode, Mr. Tablet!
Hunt the truck.
Bill and Ben play a trick that results in a wild goose chase. Following the worst episode from Sodor, we get the best episode from Sodor. And if you thought we'd never see Edward again, well, here's proof that him leaving the Steam Team was the greatest thing that happened to our Blue number 2. Also worth noting, this is the other episode that Michael White wrote, and from what we've heard, he actually wrote this before An Engine of Many Colors. Why that episode got made before this remains a mystery to me. Not that I'm complaining or anything.
Hunt the Truck. Another well-written episode. But why, you might ask? Allow me to explain. We start this episode off with Nia struggling to find the correct trucks she needs until Bill and Ben, being the mischievous buggers they are, decided to play a trick on her with this new game they called, hence the title, Hunt the Truck. But not only that, Edward still knows how to keep those twins in order, and that was what the producers have done really well. But later on, they cleverly hid another special truck that Edward was supposed to take, only to find that their trick had backfired when they realized it was for the Earl's Christmas party. Not only that, but the truck had vanished, which left them scurrying around the island trying to find it. It wasn't until the end we get to see Edward with the exact truck with him the whole time.
Let's just say, nobody can hide trucks better than you two, but nobody can find trucks better than me. I know all your hiding places.
That episode was really satisfying for me to watch. I would consider this episode as one of the best written that the season has to offer.
This episode was very entertaining from start to finish. Bill and Ben, I felt, were at their best here. We get to see Edward in a cheeky mentor role, and he seems to know the twins' games better than they do. One thing I kinda wish happened though would be a brief scene where Bill and Ben go to Farquhar Quarry. They see Mavis and she's all, I remember playing that game with Toby. He was driven up a wall. And the twins will be like, wait, what?
Now I'm afraid I have nothing to say about this one either. I'll admit it wasn't too bad of an episode, but there were better episodes out there.
And somehow a Bollywood related episode is better.
That's my opinion, Zach.
I wonder what it would have been like if Boko was to be in most of the story as well. Like probably in a rewrite or something.
What would Boko contribute that anyone else like Nia couldn't? Not to mention he doesn't have the most interesting personality.
I don't know. Maybe he could assist his friend with that trick?
Edward seemed to do everything solo with success.
Fair enough. Mike, your thoughts?
Well, there's one thing I can say. Remember that moment with Emily and Duck and what Rebecca does? Well, there's a moment with Nia and Edward in this episode.
Hello, Nia. Is something wrong?
Oh, hi, Edward. I'm looking for a covered truck. I left it here when I went to get refueled, and when I came back, it was gone.
Not like it's gonna calm people down, I'm afraid. There are certain fans who want Nia demoted to extra and Edward to be put back onto the Steam team. And until it happens, they are never going to stop.
Spoiler people, it will never happen.
Hence why those certain fans will never stop bitching and moaning about it.
Perhaps not, but it's still cool. Now all we need is a scene between Becky and Henry, which we may get in season 23. Who knows?
And the award for filler episode of the season goes to, drumroll please,
The Case of the Puzzling Parts.
Sydney and Paxton solve a mystery involving some engine parts.
Well, it was nice to see Paxton and Sydney having that interaction with each other throughout this entire episode. That one scene at the end where Sydney just shot fire from his cab, that was just really weird and insanely disgusting. And I thought diesel engines couldn't pass gas. Get it?
No offense, but that was a crappy pun.
You seriously got no sense of humor whatsoever, guys. Hey, wait a minute! If you said no offense, why give it to me anyway?
Never mind, Cameron. Back on topic, Paxton and Sydney were fun to watch together, but honestly, there's not much going for this one. We get to see the SKR engines briefly, and only Scarlowy gets a speaking role.
At least you're the most understanding of the group, Rach, and I like you for it. Not like Mr. Grouchy Pants over there.
Rachel, could I bring something up for a moment?
Yeah? What's up? Oh, is it about when you scared me when you were getting over to the barrel? It's okay, Matt. You were just frustrated when Zack decided to taunt you over forever and ever.
I'm glad to hear that.
I'm sorry too. I guess I got overexcited about episodes in Australia.
Well, every season of any show is guilty of a filler episode, and the Case of the Puzzling Parts is no exception. It's not a great episode by any means, but it's harmless. That's probably the best word I can use for this episode. Harmless.
Much better than Apology Impossible overall.
But it's still really boring.
I've seen worse. Then again, I've also seen better.
I've got nothing to say about this one. It's so average, it's not even worth covering in full. Only one more episode to go this season.
Counting on Nia.
Nia lands herself in trouble when it comes to reading numbers.
I like Nia. She's feisty, clever, doesn't stand for nonsense, but she's also empathetic. But why on earth did they have to wait a whole season just to give her an episode? I mean, she had parts to play in Forever and Ever and Hunt the Truck, and the rest of her appearances could easily have been occupied by other characters. And Mattel apparently wanted to push a female agenda onto the show? Guess how well that turned out.
It's failing, and fans are becoming more and more divided than ever before. Although I've grown to like a few of the minor females introduced in the new season, and besides, the episode itself really wasn't very good to me.
I just honestly think that this episode should be pushed into my pocket of boring episodes. I mean, I did understand the trials and troubles Nia had to go through, but I just kinda lost hope of giving this episode a fair chance. With that being said, I just have no other words as to what I think about it. Talk about boring.
Like episodes such as Runaway Truck and Rosy's Red, I don't get the hate Counting on Nia gets. The episode implies that Nia suffers from dyscalculia, a disorder that someone can't read numbers, which is honestly surprising that they went that route. I mean, they gave us autistic Theo and gender fluid Lexi in Journey Beyond Sodor, so why not dyscalculic Nia? And how she learned to read Arabic numerals with Annie and Clarabelle's help was very clever and made good usage of the fantasy sequence.
Another boring fantasy sequence.
Shut up. At this point, they have to be expected. But for Lee Pressman's final ever contribution to the show since his return with Kevin's cranky friend, I say he picked the right episode to end his time with Thomas. And even though I prefer Rosy's Red, I say Counting on Nia is season 22's most underrated episode, and one of my personal top 10 for this season.
Too bad Counting on Nia was boring and frustrating to watch.
I think I'll ignore that. So I'd like to take this moment to say thank you to Lee Pressman for many great episodes in the show. You'll be missed by many, but your contributions to the show will always be appreciated.
I personally found it a bit frustrating because Nia had a number 18 on her tank the entire time and no one bothered to tell her that. Like, wouldn't she at least know what that number is by now? I do admit I have become more lenient towards this episode over time, but it's still confusing why she wouldn't know her basic numbers.
Well, to be fair, the Arabic number system isn't the only one in the the world. Maybe she was used to a different number system.
That's true enough, Zack, but why is her number in the Arabic number system even before she moved to Sodor?
In addition to helping dyslexic kids, this episode is also helpful to those who speak English as a second language. People who speak some languages don't use the same numeral system as we English speakers do, and since numbers are read differently all over the world, it would be most helpful. It seems as though Thomas and Friends is becoming the railway equivalent to Sesame Street.
Which is, unfortunately, further dividing the fan base, and I don't think it's winning the target audience over too well either. I'll admit that since its move to Nick Jr., ratings did go up slightly, but Thomas is still falling way behind to Paw Patrol.
And what Mattel fails to realize is that animals are more popular than railways. Not a knock on Thomas, mind you, just making a statement. So, season 22 of Thomas and Friends. Is it really the worst of the show? Well, there's quite a lot to say about it.
If I may be frank, it was easily the worst I've seen in some years. I'll gladly admit that it's better than 8 for 16 overall, but it still reeks of quality drop.
But is this season really the start of a second Dark Age? I don't think so. At least it's too early to make that call. And besides, I've seen way worse before and after.
Unfortunately, I see it as the start of a possible second Dark Age. Yes, it may be too soon to call it that, but that's how I feel about it.
You really don't like the season or concept, do you?
Look, I really wanted to like and give season 22 a chance, but I feel that the changes just aren't working out too well, and this could eventually lead into some dire consequences for the franchise as a whole, especially with Mattel's executive meddling on the show and current handling of merchandise. Good God, I can already picture the negative reviews from fans and parents.
Sometimes I just wish they could just bring back the wooden railway merch. What was Mattel even thinking about making those cheap knockoffs? Can't they just bring them back or something?
Beats me. I loved those toys before they were tampered with.
Another thing, in addition to Mattel, Nickelodeon in the US hasn't exactly been treating the show as well as we have been hoping they would when it switched over from PBS Kids to Dare. Granted, Nickelodeon did give Thomas and Friends plenty of advertising when it debuted in March, and the show got ratings on par with Paw Patrol, but soon Nickelodeon started shafting the show a mere few weeks in and put it onto Nick Jr. Not only that, but Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure, The Great Race, and Journey Beyond Sodor were each aired as 3-part specials instead of their full length. If this is a sign of worse things to come, then God help us all.
Not only that, but they've yet to air the entirety of seasons 19 and 20 on there. I can understand why they didn't bother with seasons 17 and 18, because they already aired on PBS Kids at this point. Not to mention, some of the voices are different in those seasons. And I know they're not even gonna touch seasons 8 through 16 at this point.
Honestly, what's wrong with airing them in reruns? They haven't even aired King of the Railway or Tale of the Brave either.
I've seen reruns of seasons 13 through 16 on ABC Kids, unfortunately, but they seem to be far in between. Oh, and Hero of the Rails, Miss Down Rescue, Day of the Diesels, and Blue Mountain Mystery cropped up occasionally, and much to my surprise, so is Calling All Engines, The Great Discovery, and even some of seasons 8 through 12.
To be completely honest with you guys, well, I've never really seen those reruns, but I kinda liked it when they were in full length sometimes. I know they have to be in breaks in between, but yeah. I seriously need to catch up with you guys.
With that being said, it's time to reveal our top 10 overall.
Hooray! Forever and f***ing Ever isn't part of the top 10!
Only by 3 points, Matt. It ended up at 11.
What is it, Rach?
I looked at the bottom 5 and... How do I say this delicately? This one only got in by 2 points to the case of puzzling parts, but... No! Oh dear. I dropped it.
Oh.
What? What's the matter?
You might want to look at number 22.
Oh no.
What? It's not bad, is it? Oh, botheration. This is bad.
Let me see that. Number 26 is Apology Impossible. Huh, good to know. Number 25 is Thomas in the Wild. Number 24 is Thomas and the Monkey Palace. Number 23 is The Water Wheel. And number 22... Ah! Is this your idea of a goddamn joke, Zack?
No, that wasn't a joke this time, honest.
Thomas Goes to Bollywood is ranked number 22? What the friggin' hell?
I hate to break it to you, Matt, but Thomas Goes to Bollywood isn't everyone's cup of tea, and...
And what?
Well, I'm afraid I'm with Zack. I don't hate the episode as much as he does, but the episode really wasn't very interesting. Please don't kill me.
As I said before, it was just... there.
Guys, couldn't we just say our names before we draw this episode to a close?
I just remembered. I have cookies baking and they'll be ready soon. Who wants to come over and have some?
Anything to get away from Matt's anger right now.
Hey, you guys, wait up!
Guys, don't leave me here! I don't want to have my butt burnt by his fiery rage!
Run to the hills! Run for your lives!